Hello everyone, I'm Ricky and welcome to the Dev Method. Today we're going to be taking a look at recreating some UI that I have from the GitHub Mobile app in SwiftUI. So I have the developer website open. It's developer.apple.com, and I'm reading a little bit about the SwiftUI here. I could see what it's used for, and primarily what had been used in the past is UIKit. But SwiftUI is quickly becoming very popular, and then there's also a lot of features that are built into it. The SwiftUI stuff that we're going to do today is a great way for you to get started and get familiar so that when you're ready to build a brand new application, maybe this is something that you can look at and using. The biggest thing about SwiftUI is that it has this declarative syntax, so it's very similar, reminiscent to something like React. Or Flutter is another one that uses something very similar to this too. So you can read all that on the website if you'd like. I'll put the link in the description. So the main thing is that we're going to be trying to replicate what we have here, just this top part of a pull request from the GitHub Mobile app. And the GitHub Mobile app is for Android and iOS. So we're going to try the best we can to get something like this knocked out. And we're going to go step by step here. So when you have a project open for the very first time and you set it to be a SwiftUI project, this will be something that you would see. And there's quite a bit to look at here. So I want to try and help you break it down so it's less intimidating. So the first thing is that we have a struct here, and then we have another struct, and this is for the preview of the previous struct, what is called here as the content view. And then it simply returns the content view here, and that's what's going to be just showing here on the right-hand side as the preview. So we'll use some of the preview here. Sometimes you'll have to use the simulator if you want to see a little bit more when it comes to interaction. It's also, the simulator is also a little bit more stable than the preview. But just to get you guys started, this view here is essentially a protocol or an interface that needs to be implemented. So every view has to implement this, and the idea is that there is a body. So this is actually declared as an associated type, and the body is also of type view. And so this is a composite structure. So the view contains a body that is also a view, and so on and so forth. And it has one property, which is a getter, and this is a self.body, like so. And that's really the basics of the view protocol. Everything else after that is an extension or an inheritance of this protocol that you'll see in the documentation and see with the other types within SwiftUI. So I'm going to delete this here. If you want to take a deeper look at the interface, you can actually click once and then do Command-Control-J. And you'll start seeing some of the Swift generated interface. Tells you all the platforms it's available for, gives you some documentation. And this is not the only way to learn SwiftUI, but it's a great way to just see really quickly as you're coding what are the different parts, and possibly how can you be looking for something new to do in SwiftUI. So let's break down what we're actually returning here. This body, notice it doesn't say like self.body, it says some view. So that's essentially saying to Swift, okay, it's going to be some sort of view. We don't necessarily know what it is quite yet, but we will know at some point. If we wanted to actually know, like right now, this is actually returning text. We could say this is text that it's returning. Another way to write this too is I can say the text equals the text from below, like so. Could set this as a local variable and return it that way. So the nice thing about this syntax is that we have implicit returns, and this is a newer feature. We're dealing with Swift 5.2 here, but this has an implicit return, and therefore we get the type from that. So it's pretty cool that we can shorten this up with just something like some view. I would suggest if you're learning this for the first time, start with some view, because it's probably not going to be just text that you return all the time or just another type of view. There's going to be more to it. You're going to want to refactor. And so instead of always changing the return types and then changing the code, I would leave it to just some view for right now. Let's take a look at the view here. And let's go back to the longer way. Let's just say text. Now, what if we wanted to modify this text? So what we do is we take the text and we have a method on here called font, which takes a font. And font has a couple of static variables on it. One of the ones that it's declared is large title. So if I give this a large title, so I have modified text here, and now return that, since these are structs, they're actually not necessarily the same object here. We're not modifying the text struct, and what we're actually doing is creating a new struct. So this new struct here, modified text, and then returning it, it's like we have one struct here, and then we constructed another struct here, and then returned it. So that's essentially some of what's happening in SwiftUI, but you don't necessarily always write it this way. We're going to be taking a look at recreating that app, and this is not necessarily the way that we're always going to write it. But for the time being, let's resume so you can see. There you go. There's the live preview update. Let's take a look at that design. So we have like this title here. Let's start with something like that. And in order to make this a little bit easier for you guys to follow along, I'm actually going to take this stuff out and just return my example. And I'll make this into a new struct called example, which implements view, which has this body, and then it's going to return something. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and just push this all the way down. There we go, cleans it up a little bit for us to look at. So in our example, let's create a struct called a pull request. So it'll be called pull request view, which implements view. It'll return something, and right now it's just going to return some sort of text here. So we'll say pull request view. There we go. So there we have it. That's at least the start of it. Let's go ahead and look at the design. So let's just try and recreate exactly what it looks like here. So fixes login screen warning. Okay. So I'm going to make this a property of this view. I'll call it the name. It's going to be of type string. Now something Swift is doing for us, it's automatically creating an initializer for us. So this is an internal initializer, automatically generated for us in Swift. That's what it looks like. I'm going to drop that. I'm not going to leave that on there. But that's essentially what's going to happen as we add all these properties. It's going to keep modifying that constructor for us, and then therefore force the compiler to pass in these properties. So this is called fixes login screen warning. Login screen warning, like so. And since we'll have a couple of different properties, I'm going to already start putting them on multiple lines, so it's a little bit easier to read. Now, so far, this doesn't work as expected. We need this name to appear where it says something here. So let's change that. We'll just pass in name. So name is a string, which goes into text. Text is then returned as a view for the body, which is then processed by my example. And then therefore, here it is right on the screen. Now, we talked about the large title, but I don't think this needs a large title. So I'm going to do a return and then dot font. And instead of writing out font, I'm going to do a shorthand. I'm going to do dot notation. So just dot to one of these static variables, and we're going to use headline. There we go. Okay, looks good. So now if I want to just test this, I'll just remove the text here, and we can see it gets updated. So I know it's working. Great, cool, really simple. Now here's the other thing. We have some other text that we want to put on here, so let's take a look at like the name of this. Let's just say desktop/desktop is the name of the application. So app name will be a property, and put app name here. Desktop/desktop. There we go. And where should it go? It should go above, right? So let's just make another text and add in app name. Now we're actually going to get an error here. And what it's saying is that we don't know if you're returning this text or returning that text. How do we aggregate them together? Well, there's a couple ways to do this. And one of the ways is actually creating these as like a group, like a pairing. So we have something for that, and that's called a tuple view. And its constructor takes a tuple. So we're going to do a tuple of these two things. So let me put this on a separate line so you can see how this looks. There we go. Now, I know what you might be thinking already, that this kind of looks ugly, and it does. It's not so clean anymore. If I resume to get the live preview up and running, let me put in my comma there. So, yeah, we don't necessarily have exactly what we want. Although it does compile, this is not what we are looking for. In fact, it actually put these on two separate views. So not totally what we're looking for here. So what we actually do want, let me undo some of this stuff here. Let's go back to without the tuple view. Okay. So what we could do is we could have put a plus, right? Because I said it was like a declarative syntax language, this SwiftUI. Now, this is what it did here. It put them side by side. Now, the fonts on the two different texts are different, so that's good. So that's working. But this concatenation, what that's doing, it's actually returning another text. So a third text object, and then returning it. That's essentially what that plus is doing. So the plus could be helpful in some cases, but in this case, I don't need it. And what I want to do instead is actually declare a way for this to lay out vertically, one on top of the other. And this is known as a stack. If you do a right click on the first text here, there's these code actions you could bring up from the context menu. And I'm going to do an embed in Vstack. So pretty funky syntax there. Now I'll just take this part of the code, move that right in. And that actually does fix our issue. So now the live preview on the right-hand side is updated, so one is on top of the other. So it's a great way to just start getting the layout there. Now here's the thing. This is actually a constructor, and then it's returning the Vstack here. It's a little goofy to look at, but if we were to say that this is content, this might look a little bit more what you're used to in SwiftUI. So the content here, we can forego that named parameter, just put it something like this. So most of the constructors that you embed other views in, like this here, the Vstack, we use the trailing closure syntax. So that's what that's doing. There are other properties here though. So one of them is alignment. And I'm going to say it's dot leading. This is a horizontal alignment property. There we go. So now we're getting a little bit closer to what we have there on the website. Now it's actually font that I want to be a little bit smaller. So let's just say that this has a font of, instead of headline, we'll do sub-headline. Okay, cool. Starting to get somewhere. All right, and I'm going to take this return out. All right, very cool. What's the next thing that we can move on to? Well, I have this image here. Now I have something built into our project to do this image. Let me just put it up here. So do image, and it's just a built-in asset. Normally you'd have this image like download from somewhere, but we're going to forego that bit of detail for now. And we're just going to say image named, and we give it a string literal. I believe I called this app-icon, and it just goes right in there. So here's the thing though, that needs to be side by side with the desktop. So we're going to have to use another type of stack. So instead of a Vstack to vertically stack two things on top of each other, we're going to do an Hstack, which is side by side. And this time I'm going to type it out. So I'll just say Hstack like so. I'm actually going to pull these two things into it. And here we are. So now they're side by side. But that's how quick it is to experiment with new code. You just type it in, you'll see the update on the right-hand side. If you like it, you take it. If not, you move on. So in this case, I'm going to move on from that. We'll come back to that at a later point. Now, the next thing I need in this Hstack actually is the pull request number. right? So let's go ahead and make this another thing. So pull request ID, and then we'll make this an integer. And so this is the pull request ID. What was it? It was 5920. So 5920. There we go. And this will be another text. And this will be the pull request ID. But what we'll do is we'll take the description from that. So the description is a string representation of that integer. And all right, let's see. Let's resume. Let's see it update. Oh, and it needs the pound or the hash here. So I'll just do a quick concatenation of the two strings. There we go. Put that in. Now, I actually want this to be a different type of font. Let's say it's like a footnote because it's a little bit smaller. And I'm going to use another one. So there's a foreground color. So this is very similar to font where you could do color dot something and it'll put in a color for you, but I'll use the shorthand notation. And I'll just say gray. All right, cool. So now we're getting somewhere. Now the next thing I want to take a look at is this bottom part here. So there's the source branch and then the destination branch. So the source branch is where everything's coming from. Source branch, that'll be a string. And then the destination, that'll be a string too. Okay, so source branch is fixes login screen, and the destination branch was master. Okay. So now this one actually goes below, so we'll just put it back into the Vstack out here. And let's see, so we do text, source branch, and let's do text, destination branch. And let's just see what that looks like for now. Won't be exactly what we want. So this we'll have to do another Hstack. So I'm going to do my right click, show the code actions, embed in an Hstack. Pull this into there. Now the other thing that needs to be in between it is another image. So I have familiarity with some of the new SF symbols. So there's a dot notation I can use, arrow dot right. And it brings in a symbol from the built-in symbols in iOS. So that's pretty cool. Now that is actually a gray color again. So I'm going to put in just the gray there. That looks cool. Now this, let's see. So let's set the font. This time we're going to do a custom font. And we'll use Courier, like so. And let's set the size to, I don't know, 11? Oh no, that's too small. Maybe 12? Still too small. So 16? All right, 16 looks good. Now, if I want to reuse this bit of code here, I could just copy this, turn and paste. So now it looks similar for both. Now, the other thing about this is I actually repeated some of the code that's here, but we don't necessarily have to do that. So in fact, I could take this all out and put this under the Hstack as a different option. So I'm going to put a font on the Hstack. So everything within there that can change its font is going to do that. So now here it is, Courier 16. Another thing that I want from these two is I actually want the foreground color to be different. So I'm going to give it like a blue here. And then the foreground color, a blue here. So that looks cool. But then the last thing is going to be a background view. And that is actually going to be a color. So a color can be a view as well. So I'm going to say blue, but with opacity, let's do 0.3. So it's like a value between 0 and 1. Okay, that looks cool. But I'm going to give that some sort of like standard padding, like so. So could we do that? Is that going to work? Oh, we are so close. So close to getting that to be what we want it to be. It's not going to be padding. Yeah, all right. Well, we're getting there. So I'll take this for the blue, put it on here. So now we have it on both. All right. Now, let's put some padding on the background itself. Oh, you know what? The order does matter, so maybe we put the padding here. Oh, look at that. So simple to prototype. So simple. All right, I got my preview back. All right, cool. So the padding, that's okay for now. I actually want to put maybe some like corner radius on this. Let's try an 8. What's the corner radius? Oh, not good enough. 16? Let's go back to 8. Okay, so it gives a little bit of like a rounded edge to it. So let's put all this right here too. Just copy and paste it. There we go. All right, cool. Now the padding, the color, all of this stuff can be wrapped up into one. So there's a couple ways to go about this. Let's just stick with the basics for now. Let's just call this a branch label. Yeah, so branch label, which is of type view. Again, it has a body, which is of some view. And all we need to give it is the text, or like I guess the branch name. So I'll just call it name. And we're going to return this whole thing here. Put it in here. Now this is the name, right? So that's how it's going to look. And now I could take away all this. Just say I want a branch label, which has a name. And right now it's given the source branch, like that. So it's going to look a little bit cleaner. There we go. Resume. Should look exactly the same. Now, if I want to change the padding, edge insets, like for the top and the bottom, now I have a simple place to do that. Let's see, the bottom will do 4 and then 2 here. Yeah, okay. Maybe the top will give like an 8 instead. Yeah? Okay. Well, then maybe the left and right will get a 4. Or the leading and trailing. So let me break these up on multiple lines so you can see that. There we go. All right. So we don't have exact measurements here of what it should be, but this is getting closer to what we want. Another thing about this too is that we put the font on everything, but really we don't need the font on the image. So we could just take this out and maybe put this somewhere right here. And then instead of 16, let's set it back to 14 so it's a little bit smaller. Okay. Well, I could live with that. So we've already gotten quite a bit of this setup here. Now the opacity I think could be a little bit more. So let's see, give it maybe a 2. Let's do 1. Okay, 1 maybe is a little too much. Do 0.15. Okay, so you get the idea. We've now already started developing some sort of UI. The last thing I want to do here, let's see. So I got the example pull request. Now if I want to line up a couple different kinds and go like this, I will put this into a Vstack and duplicate it. There we go. Now we have 2. So this one is, instead of fixes login screen, it could be like added new features. And this is now the next incremental one up. Feature slash 1, 2, 3, 4. Big updates. And again, that's going into master. So now we get an idea of what it looks like to prototype these views. That's all we're going to go through today. If you guys would like to see more, go ahead and leave those comments in the description below. I'll post some of the links about the source material, about where I've learned some of this stuff. If you guys like what you see, give it a thumbs up. Until next time, thanks for watching.